For this lesson, we are going to be talking about the 5-number summary, which is a way to kind of understand a data set. And we're also going to be talking about the box plot, which is the visual graph of the 5-number summary. Before we get started, we have to understand something called a percentile. Now, percentile sounds like percent, and that's exactly the point. Pardon me, percentile tells you what percent of the data falls below a certain number. So let's say, and you see the bumper stickers where people say, oh, you know, my child was an honor student at such and such an elementary school, or people get really proud of their children's score. And one score that we can look at is the SAT. And you might say that your child was 85th percentile on the SAT. And this is really good because what does this mean? Well, I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. It does not mean that your child scored 85%. What 85th percentile means is that 85% of scores were below your child's score. That's what this means if someone says my child was 85th percentile on the SAT. 85% of scores were below your child's score, which is the same as saying my child scored better than 85% of test takers. So that's pretty good. Percentile is also something used on a lot of other standardized tests, like even the graduate record exam, the GRE. So if you're in college and you're planning to go to grad school, the GRE is an exam you might take, and then they're going to tell you what percentile you scored when you get your results. So here's the symbol. If I want to talk about the 85th percentile, I'm just going to use that as P sub 85. This is the 85th percentile. But for the 5-number summary, we are actually most interested in P25, which is the 25th percentile, P50, the 50th percentile, and P75, the 75th percentile. That's what I'm actually interested in for the 5-number summary. And these are also written as quartiles because 25% is a quarter, right? So 25% is the first quartile, Q1. 50% is the second quartile, Q2. And 75 percentile is the third quarter, Q3. So there's just about all the information you know. By the way, I should tell you that these are the quartiles. I should write that down. The only other information you need to know is that the 50th percentile, or the second quartile, is just your median. So that's pretty nice. Okay. Let's take a look at a big data set you may have seen before, and let's find the 5-number summary and the box plot for this. So starting with the 5-number summary. Five-number summary is the min, Q1, the 25th percentile, or the first quartile, Q2, which we know is also the median, Q3, and the max. So there are my 5 numbers: min, Q1, median, Q3, and maximum. So that's what I'm looking for from my 5-number summary. Now, there we go. Now, you can do this by hand, but it's actually preferable to do it using a statistical calculator. So we are going to be using a statistical calculator at www.statdisk.org. .com. So here we are, statdisk.com, and I have all of the data preloaded and ready to go. So how are we going to find this 5-number summary? We are going to go Data Tools and Explore Data. And this is exactly how we found the measures of center, the mean, the median, mode. It's also how we found the standard deviation and the variance. So select data from column 1, evaluate. And actually our 5-number summary is right here ready to go. So how did we do this? Let's see, we did Data Tools, and then we explored data. So let's see the minimum. Let's go back to the list and see if we can find it. And right in the middle is this 5-number summary. Minimum, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, maximum. So my minimum is 41. That's the smallest number in the data set. And that we can see is true. There you go. 41 is the smallest number. So min is 41. And remember the units here are points, scores in points. So 41 points is my minimum. Q1 is 64 points. And what does that mean? Remember, first quartile is 25th percentile. That means that 25% of test takers scored at 64 points or worse than 64 points. Okay, the median, the second quartile is 70.5. So I could get that from second quartile, or I could go back up here and get it from median. Same value, 70.5. All right, that is 70.5 points. Q3, or the 75th percentile, is 79.5. So what that means is that 75% of people who took this test scored equal to or worse than 79.5 points. And finally, we need the maximum, which is 99. So the max is 99 points. All right, so that is my 5-number summary, and that is how I find the 5-number summary. Last thing I want to do is I want to turn this 5-number summary into what's called a box plot. And this could also be called, sometimes when I first learned about this, it was called a box and whisker plot. So for the box plot, this is just a visual representation, but I want to be sure that my visual representation is to scale. So let's get started. My minimum is 41, so I'm going to start at a minimum of 40. And my maximum is 99, so I'm going to take all the way up to 100. And then I want to go to scale from there. So halfway between 40 and 100, let's see, is going to be 70. So 70 is right in the middle. And we would have, in between those, let's see, we would have 50 and 60. In between those, we would have 80 and 90. So there is my scale for my box plot. And in fact, I'm just going to adjust this down, because now we'll draw the box plot on top. So let's see. My minimum was 41 points. So my minimum is just right about there. And you can label it for the box plot or not label it. It doesn't matter. And I always go maximum next. There's no real reason. And I will go ahead actually and label that, guys. That's the min. And then the max comes next at 99 points. So that's just right above or right below 100. So that's the max. And then let's see, Q1, my first quartile is 64 points. So that's between 60 and 70. So let's just go right there, right about 65 almost. And then the median is right about 70 points. So that's right about there. And then Q3 is 79.5 points, which is just about 80 points right there. Okay. So to complete this, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and draw the box. Right, this is a box plot, so I draw those numbers as a box. And if you ever heard this called a box and whisker plot, you can think about this as a cat with whiskers connecting out to your max and your min. So there is my box plot or my box and whisker plot. By the way, I should label these, right? This was Q1. This was Q3. And the median was right in the middle. And notice that I did this scale down at the bottom and I did this to scale. And that is very important when you draw the box plot, because we can see that actually, since the minimum is kind of far away, it's a little farther away from the center than the max was, that the person who scored 41 points is actually a little bit more of an outlier than the person who scored 99 points. And that's why I want to see this to scale. So there is how you use StatDisk to find your 5-number summary and how you draw your box plot by hand. By the way, if you ever want to double check your box plot, there it is. StatDisk has it for you right there. And you can even download it as a PNG. So there you have it.